Provost Prisley.
Present.
Provost Balfour.
Present.
Councillor Aitchison.
Here.
Councillor Anslow. Councillor Binney.
Present.
Councillor Bowes.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Buchanan. I beg
Here.
your pardon. Bailey Buchanan.
Here.
Councillor Bundy.
Here.
Councillor Colley.
Councillor Colley's running late. She's got another meeting. We'll join as soon as possible.
Councillor Deacon.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Present.
Councillor Flynn.
Present.
Councillor Forrest.
Present.
Councillor Garner.
Here.
Councillor Hannah.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Bailey Kerr.
Here.
Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Meiklejohn.
Present.
Councillor Murtagh.
And shut up.
Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Councillor Patrick.
Present.
Councillor Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Ritchie.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sinclair.
Here.
Councillor Spears. Present. And Councillor Steinbank.
Present.
Yes, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Moody. Of the 6 motions received, 4 C, D, E and F stood referred to the executive. Following my meeting with the group leaders, I agreed that C and D would be dealt with by the council. E and F remain referred and will be dealt with by the executive. The next item of business is the annual report of the Chief Social Worker, so we'll go to Miss Lacey.
Thank you, Provost. The annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer covers the period from 1st April 2022 to 31st of March 2023. With approval from Falkirk Council, it is submitted to the Scottish Government as part of the statutory responsibilities of the Chief Social Work Officer. To assist with the analysis of all 32 Chief Social Work Officer reports, to prepare one overarching report provides a national position, and to do this, a prescribed template is issued. This year we have a new template and the report may look a little different to members as a result of that. The role of the Chief Social Work Officer is to provide professional governance, leadership and accountability for the delivery of social work and social care services. Section 1 of the appended annual report outlines various ways the statutory responsibilities are exercised, with reach across Council, Integration Joint Board and the Community Planning Partnership. The Chief Social Work Officer has key responsibility for performance management and the identification and management of corporate risk as it relates to the delivery of social work services. Section 2 of the annual report outlines service quality and performance information. Challenges and improvements are outlined at Section 3 of the report. A summary of some of the challenges are the high numbers of young people that we have welcomed to Falkirk as part of the National Transfer Scheme, who all need to be accommodated as looked after children, and the shortfall that we're experiencing in our numbers of mental health officers. Improvements highlighted in the report include the important work in justice with our partners and the effectiveness of co-located services, the restructured developments in the Health and Social Care Partnership, resulting in the development of an access team which will improve the quality and consistency of responses to the public, and the introduction of the new Information Rights Service to improve performance around responses and meeting subject access request timescales and support for people who have experienced abuse or neglect in the care system in the past. Section 4 summarises financial resources available to social work services. At Section 5 of the annual report, I outlined significant challenges around recruitment and retention of social workers and occupational therapists. This was a priority issue over the reporting period. Like other parts of the country, we are finding it difficult to recruit and retain staff, particularly experienced staff. Suitable staffing levels and management arrangements are a critical aspect of the enabling context and culture needed to safeguard and protect people in our communities. Importantly, the report outlines what we have done to address the problems and how we are proactively monitoring impact. The Chief Social Work Officer is required to ensure that all social work services workers meet the requirements of the AASC Codes of Practice, and how I ensure we are meeting our duties is contained within Section 6. The learning and development opportunities we provide to our staff are extensive. The energy and the investment in this area not only reinforces our commitment to our workforce, but also to those in our communities dependent on receiving services from skilled, knowledgeable practitioners. Looking ahead at Section 6 notes that consideration is currently being given to how Falkirk's children's social work services are delivered and managed at a local level, and whether, in due course, these services should be integrated into the Health and Social Care Partnership. This year, we're keeping a close eye on developments for a National Care Service, and I know that more than ever, given the demands of the workforce, we need to work together in innovative ways to adapt and thrive in a very challenging and uncertain context. As per our local arrangements, I use the Chief Social Work Officer annual report to satisfy another requirement, which is to publish an annual duty of candour report. This year's report can be found at Section 8, and during the reporting year, there's been no duty of candour incidences. In my foreword to the report, I highlight that the impact of poverty, trauma, and the changing landscape of service delivery is disproportionately impacting on those who need and benefit most from social work and social care services. I highlight the continued high demand for support coming in from our communities as we recover from the overwhelming impact of the pandemic. The social work services workforce is diverse. This report tells some of the story of the work that they do and tries to do justice to their commitment and their dedication of service for others, and I'm immensely grateful to them all. I seek to satisfy the responsibilities of the Chief Social Work Officer role by delegating some of the statutory responsibilities to other suitably qualified and experienced officers, and I'm pleased to be joined today to answer questions you may have by Ali Walls and Martin Tom, who support me with functions in justice and adult social work. I refer Council to the recommendations at Section 2 of the cover report. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Provost. You'll have to bear with me. My voice is a bit croaky today. First of all, again, I thank all the staff across child and adult social work services and justice services, and to those working across our partners and providers, including those who care for our family members and volunteers in our community. Their dedication in the face of all the challenges we face is both admirable and is responsible for delivering positive outcomes for the people using services, children and families. I'd also like to thank Sarah Lacey for her leadership as a Chief Social Work Officer, driving forward transformation and improvement, all with a smile on her face and a fierce commitment to delivering the best services possible in Falkirk. I'd like to highlight some of the other work in children justice services, as many of the excellent examples in adult services were mentioned yesterday as part of the IJB report. First of all, I want to echo the comments made yesterday about the sterling work of the Women in Justice Service, who won an Excellence Award at the recent Scottish Social Work Services Awards. And of course, both the joint dementia initiatives and the Caledonian Service and Falkirk Learning Disabilities team for the recent recognition in these awards. In many areas of work, Team Falkirk is definitely leading the way. Falkirk has restructured and created more opportunities for social workforce, which will not only assist recruitment but also retain excellent staff for our council and our Health and Social Care Partnership. Falkirk has mainstreamed the initial response team and created access team, providing consistent approaches to referrals, protecting children and supporting families at the earliest opportunity. There has been significant work to redesign services, with more to come, including rights, the whole family support and more, seeking to deliver closer to home and making the promise real. At this point, I want to recognise the work of the Falkirk Champs, consistently and accurately telling us as a council how we provide the best support for care experienced children and young people. And Falkirk support for asylum-seeking children and young people in both the National Transfer Scheme and in supporting Ukrainian families to settle in Scotland. In a world where too much conflict and too much hateful narrative where all too often children and young people are victims. We cannot underestimate how important and sadly needed this truly is. I won't say any more, but to thank everyone involved again. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Devine. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to formally second, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor Meikle-John. Will now, Councillor Hannah.
I have no amendments.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Bailey Care next.
No amendments, Provost.
Councillor Spears.
No amendments, but I have a question.
Okay, thank you. Now open up for any questions. Councillor Spears.
You mentioned children in care, historical grievances. Can you expand on that, please?
There has been, over the course of a number of years, a Scottish child abuse inquiry, and the inquiry has been working over a number of different phases, and the phases have included a case study on foster care and on residential care, boarding schools, what used to be termed as borstals. Survivors of abuse in care settings have been encouraged to participate in the inquiry. So they are enabled through various different routes to be able to access advice from the inquiry team, to perhaps provide witness testimony to the inquiry team. We've now moved on to a position where, although the inquiry continues with no line of sight when that inquiry will conclude, that there is now a compensation scheme that has been set up and has been supported by Scottish Government and local authorities. We have, in the last year, and it's included in this year's Chief Social Work Officer report, developed an information rights team. That team is to support us to be much more efficient and effective and supportive of those who might approach Falkirk looking for evidence that they were in our care. And we're making really good strides with the development of that team. So we now have somewhere directly that Falkirk citizens can approach to receive information, either from their file that might be held, their social work file, or simply to receive the information that they need to be able to take forward a suitable claim for compensation.
So have we informed any children that were in care? Have we made this generally known to the public? Because first I've heard it, and I wouldn't think I'm a member of the general public. So are we having a campaign to highlight this so people can see what their rights are and if they wish to come forward?
Yes, we have information available on our website, and information is made available where people might be approaching different routes to be able to ask questions about how they go about that. And there's also suitable support that's required nationally from the development of the inquiry team.
Could you send that to me, please, in hard copy? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Spears. Any other questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you very much for this report, Sarah, which is excellent. And thanks to all the social work staff in children and families, social care, and in criminal justice for all the very hard work in very difficult circumstances that they do. I wonder if you would just like to say a little more about the Closer to Home strategy. That clearly is close to all our hearts, to move the balance of care away from residential towards more community-based placements. And I wonder if you could say a little more about how much success we've been having in that regard.
So Closer to Home is a familiar suite of projects, familiar to members, familiar to our workforce, and quite familiar to our partners also. It was originally developed as a children and families social work project under Council of the Future. And then quite quickly we identified that it needed to be extended to be a children's services project. Over the course of time, we have achieved some considerable savings as a consequence of changes that we've made to, for example, we have worked really closely with providers of external foster care and residential care providers to secure contracts, which mean that we have a really clear line of sight in terms of the quality of the provision to children and young people who might need to be placed out with Falkirk's own provision for foster care or for residential care. But Closer to Home's always been really clear that it's about making sure that we've got sustainable services for children and families moving forward, and making sure that we can deliver the best outcomes possible to the children and families in Falkirk. So historically, Falkirk's always relied on external provision for children, and we've had children who have been accommodated out with the Falkirk area and sometimes quite far away from Falkirk. That's really challenging for children who principally may not find themselves in a situation where it's safe at that point in time to live at home, but that can change over time. It's much more difficult for that to change over time if they're placed very, very far away. That can have an impact on their attainment because they're much further away from their schools. So Closer to Home has a number of projects. Some have come to successful conclusion. We've revamped, updated the strategy. We're now in our third phase. It's still very much the right thing to do. We're still very much focused on improving outcomes for children and young people. And we've still got a long way in terms of turning around the position that we still continue to be in, which is having young people still needing to be placed out with our authority. We are, and we have seen success, and we will continue to move forward and make all of the changes and adaptations and think clearly about what might be required for the future, but it's still a successful approach for Falkirk.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Provost. Just a very brief point just off the back of what Sarah Lacey was outlining there, that the Closer to Home is a really worthwhile strategy, and it will always be an ongoing piece of work. It's nothing that we're ever going to be able to set in place and pat ourselves in the back for. It's going to have challenges, but it's a worthwhile challenge. I do just think that I would really like to point out and highlight at this point how well Falkirk do with the promise, and I think that publicly we should be very proud of that and praise the work that not only the professionals have done, but the young people have done, and notably the Falkirk champs have done as well. I have insight into other councils and other local authorities, and it's really warming to be able to say that Falkirk are one of the leads on keeping the promise, and we should be very proud of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I'd just like to make an observation. There's so much good work in the report, you know, it's phenomenal, really. I'd just like to make an observation on unpaid work team and thank Ms. Wells for the good work that she does with everyone. You read in there all the activities that have been done: 246 gardens completed, 50 fly tipping sites cleared, pick up, delivery and dug over 50 tonnes of topsoil, working with primary schools. But it's also good to see that the unpaid work teams work collaboratively with other services to try and get those who maybe kept out of their fence to look at their drug issues and things like that. So it's really good to see that in there. Another bit I'd just like to make a comment on is on the Caledonian Women's Service, where women should really realise that violence against them isn't their fault. And it's good to see that we've got support for them, and long may that continue. So I'd just like to make comment on that. So for me, violence against women is appalling and unacceptable and should never be tolerated in any way, shape or form. Thank you. Can we agree with the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. My apologies, I'm just looking for a bit of clarification. You caught me on the hop at the start of the meeting there. Could you advise me what motions are not going to be heard today?
E and F, which is permitted development procedures and uptake of flex.
So both of them are not being heard. Can
No,
I,
they'll go to the executive.
can I then invoke Standing Order 16.4 and ask the Provost for a reason for the decision that was made, and that the decision is recorded in the minutes of the meeting?
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. I consulted with the group leaders and there was no case made to support these two being considered by council, given that they properly sit with the executive. And I don't think we need to get in a debate about that, but we've discussed it with the group leaders and that's the decision. Thank you.
I'm not questioning your decision at all, Provost. It's quite within
Okay.
your remit. However, the fact that you've discussed it with group leaders, I'm not aware that my group leader, Councillor Spears, was aware of this. I think it's a problem with the procedure in the fact that I believe, purely as a matter of courtesy, any of the proposers of motions should be informed that their decision, their motion stands referred to council. I think it's a fault in the system. I realise it wouldn't be you personally, Provost, but it is a fault in the system and it needs to be corrected. Where there's a motion has been submitted by a member of the council, we should at least have a courtesy to get back to that member and advise them on the decision that's been made.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. So we'll now move on to the first.
Other questions?
Carry on.
I think what Councillor McCabe has just highlighted is the democratic deficit. There's 5 independents, and what you're saying is if you're not in a political party, you can decide, and you can decide what motions come forward to council. I think we seriously need to look at that, because we're all elected at the same election, and the people who elect us also have the same rights as people who are elected under the banner of a political party. So I think we should ask our Director of Law to have a serious look at this.
Well, I'll just ask Mr. Moody if he's got any commentary on that.
Thank you, Provost. And the decision you've taken is nothing other than the decision in accordance with the standing orders as agreed. And as we all know, we spent a long time yesterday discussing standing orders. This wasn't one of the issues that was raised within the working group. No doubt there'll be other opportunities in the future where it can be raised. But as matters stand, this is the process we have, and it's been properly followed in this case.
Thanks very much.
Point of clarity, if from Chief Governance Officer, if that's okay. I just wondered on the procedure, for as an explanation, whether, as I understand it, regardless of whether the group leaders are consulted or not, and there's a discussion about it, potentially under the rule, even if all the group leaders didn't agree, if the Provost decides that that is the matter, even if all the group leaders wish to see it debated today under the procedure, that you're free to make, the Provost is effectively free to make that decision. Is that correct, Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Okay. I know what you said there in terms of the standing orders, and we did spend an awful long time yesterday debating that. No apologies offered from myself. But I suppose there is now the opportunity where that will come back as a fully drafted document for us to agree. And my understanding is that when that does come back for a fully drafted document for us to agree, we would have the opportunity for further amendment of that document, of the final document, because we will be obviously need to see the entirety of it. Is that correct?
We've set the direction of travel,
Yes.
I think, as a council as to the principles to be adopted in the new standing orders. So I think the anticipation would be that these would not all be revisited. Does that give an opportunity for some new issue potentially to be raised? I think it does.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thanks very much. So one of the motions we discussed yesterday, which is the Bowness Recreation Centre. So we'll now go on to the Freedom of Falkirk motion, and we'll go to Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Provost. It gives me I feel quite honoured and proud to present this today as the Veterans Champion. Having served in the armed forces, namely the RAF myself, I can say from the heart that as a forces veterans, we value greatly the support we have from the public, and therefore being recognised of the freedom of Falkirk is one of the ways it shows the people of the country to the armed forces their respect and how they honour them. And so I feel quite honoured, as I say, to now read this motion out. The Royal Regiment of Scotland was formed in March 2006 when all of our historic antidote regiments, the Royal Scots, the Royal Highland Fusiliers, the King's Own Scottish Borderers, the Black Watch, the Highlanders, namely Seaforth, Gordons and Camerons, and the Argyll and Sutherland and Highlanders, which for a long time were located in Stirling Castle, were amalgamated into a single large regiment. Many of the antecedent regiments have over the previous decades been granted freedoms of several Scottish and overseas authorities. In fact, the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, being our local regiment, was awarded the Freedom of Falkirk in 1972. Since its formation, 16 Scottish local authorities have now granted the Scottish Regiment the freedom of their local authority. The Council is asked to award this Freedom of Falkirk to the Scots in recognition of its long and proud association with Falkirk, formally honouring their historical relationship between Scots and Falkirk, as well as lay the foundation for the future. I hope you'll support this motion. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor Angelo. Do you have a seconder?
Provost.
Councillor Namo.
Yep, thanks very much, Provost. I'm happy to second my colleague, Councillor Angelo, in our capacity as our Veterans Champion. I think it's only right that we recognise our armed forces, and this is maybe a small way in showing our support. I'm also the current branch secretary for the Grangemouth branch of the Royal British Legion, and I've raised this motion with them as well, and they're in total support as far as this is concerned. I'm not going to dwell on this any longer, Provost. I would like to think we would get cross-party support for this. At the end of the day, the Royal Regiment of Scotland deserves our support. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to second the motion.
Thanks very much, Councillor Namo. Now go to Councillor Meiklejohn.
No amendment, Provost. We're happy to agree.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hannah.
Happy to agree, yes.
Billy Kerr.
No amendment, Provost, but being the ancestor of my great-grandfather and his 4 brothers all served the Royal Scots and left Slamana to fight in the Great War together. I'm very pleased that this motion's came forward. Thank you, Provost.
Councillor Spears.
No amendments, but I do have a comment. Being, I think, the only other veteran, myself and Councillor Angelo, veterans do greatly appreciate the support of their town, not just when they're away fighting wars, but also when they come back, because anybody that goes to fight a war never comes back the same person, and they rely on the people who've been there fighting for to fight for them. So I'll have great pleasure in supporting this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Spears. So we've agreed that. Thank you. Next item is Children's Hearings Area Support Team, and it's Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Provost. This motion is to highlight and thank the volunteers and all those involved in our children panel service. It's with immense gratitude and our sincere thanks to all the incredible volunteers who have devoted their time, energy and passion to serving our children's panels. Their commitment to this invaluable cause has been nothing short of extraordinary. Their selflessness and dedication in these moments of challenge and change, and their tireless efforts have been a beacon of countless young lives towards a better future. They've laid the foundations for an inclusive, nurturing and empowering environment where the voices of the children are not only heard but valued and respected. Their patience, empathy and genuine interest in developing and supporting these young individuals to have a voice has a profound impact. They've shown their commitment and instilling a sense of confidence and responsibility with their undoubted influence for the future. Their dedication to the volunteers on these panels is a testament to the power of community. You have selflessly given your time and expertise, leaving a lasting impression. In closing, we extend our deepest appreciation as a council and a heartfelt thanks to each and every volunteer. Your commitment and dedication is invaluable, not only to a council, but to the young people whose voices you hear. Your dedication paves the way for a brighter future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Devine, do you have a seconder? Councillor Sinclair?
Thank you, Provost. I'm more than happy to second this motion today, which has brought light to a team that often goes unseen, but whose impact in ensuring our children and young people are given every chance possible to play their important and central role in society is invaluable. I'm not going to add too much to Councillor Devine's remarks, other than to reiterate the vital importance of area support teams, to add my thanks and our thanks to the volunteers who have been involved over the years, and to look forward to the changes that are forthcoming nationally, and obviously to second the fact that we are going to recognise that with a letter and hope we hear support for that across the benches. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Sinclair. We'll go to Councillor Hannah.
I think we all appreciate the importance of children's hearings. It's a system that has applied in Scotland for many years and has been admired across the world, not just locally. So we are very, very keen that the basic principles of the children's hearing system are upheld and supported in every way possible. So we have no amendment to this. We're glad to see that there's going to be increased support to the children's hearing process.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hannah. We'll go to Bailey Kerr now.
Thank Provost. No amendment to it. Fully support the motion and the great work that the Children Hearing Committee, our board, carry out. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Bailey Kerr. We'll go to Councillor Spears.
No amendments.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Murtagh.
I just want to echo the remarks made of other councillors and say that during the previous term, when I was portfolio holder for public protection, the work of the staff as well to support the volunteers was invaluable, and the spirit in which they did that and the caring attitude to which they did so. I just want to recognise the amazing support that they provided, and obviously recognise our volunteers, and hope that the changes which are coming in nationally will make a material difference, but that the impact has been immeasurable to those who they have served. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. So we've agreed that no division at all. Nope. Councillor Golly.
Yes, I just wanted to note my apologies for my late arrival. I've been in transit today, and I hope you can hear me okay.
Okay, noted. Next item of business is motion D, Michael Matheson, MSP. But before we go to that, Mr. Moody has got a few words to say.
Yes, thank you, Provost. And the reason I just want to make a couple of remarks is that this is an unusual motion for us to have on our agenda. It's unusual because it brings into play an individual rather than dealing with a policy or a service matter that we would normally have when we're considering a motion in the council. I think it would be useful for members just to understand that because it brings into play an individual in this way and puts in play potentially the reputation of that individual. There just needs to be an element of caution around remarks which are made during the course of the debate. And maybe just to clarify and avoid any misapprehension, the absolute privilege which attaches in parliamentary debates doesn't apply in a local authority meeting. So it is important, I think, to clarify that your discussions and debates within this chamber are protected by qualified privilege, but it is a privilege that is qualified. And the qualification is essentially that you should not make remarks which relate to the reputation or lower the reputation of an individual if you know that those are not factually founded, or if you're reckless as to the factual basis on which that remark is made. Now, I don't want to go into detailed aspects of the law of defamation, but what I would say is I think just apply a bit of common sense and caution in relation to remarks that are made during the course of this debate. And if I was to summarise matters as shortly as possible, try to keep it factual.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Moody. We'll now go to Councillor Redmond.
Thanks, Provost. Like many others, I've watched on in frustration and disbelief as Michael Matheson's expenses scandal unfolded. I was confused and taken back by the constantly changing and conflicting account given by Mr. Matheson. After a family holiday to Morocco, Mr. Matheson found out in early January that he'd ran up a massive £11,000 bill. At the time, it was certain that this bill was caused by constituency work that he'd done on holiday. As Parliament would only cover £8,000 of the bill, he put the other £3,000 on his expenses. Mr. Matheson was 100% sure he had accrued this bill through constituency work, and it was only fair the taxpayer cover his £11,000 roaming bill, which was exactly what he did, until months later when on the 8th of November, the Telegraph ran a story on his ridiculously high data roaming bill. Mr. Matheson stuck to his guns that the bill was accrued by all the hard work he had done over his holiday in the service of people of Falkirk West. On the 9th of November, he was backed up by Humza Yusuf, who says this was a legitimate cost and Michael should not have to pay it back. Yet despite this, on the 10th of November, after reflecting long and hard, Michael Matheson decided that he should, in fact, cover the full bill himself, but was still adamant that he'd accrued it doing constituency work. Then on the 13th of November, Michael Matheson vehemently denied that anyone else had used his iPad. It wasn't until the 16th of November, with the threat of a no-confidence motion if he did not hand over his iPad, that Mr. Matheson changed his story and said that the bill was accrued by his sons watching football on the iPad. Mr. Matheson claimed that he was unaware of this until the 9th of November, and he certainly did not watch the game, as he has no interest in either Celtic or Rangers. Yet despite having no interest in either Celtic or Rangers, Mr. Matheson has attended a great number of games which the clubs have competed, often on free VIP tickets. It is my belief that Michael Matheson knew from the start exactly how he managed to run up this bill. At the time, we didn't think anyone would notice this expenses claim, and that he would just get away with landing the taxpayer with it. Just say it was for constituency work, no one will know the difference. That is no way for any elected representative to deal with public funds. We owe it to our constituents to tell them the truth the first time, not the third or fourth time under media and parliamentary scrutiny. The truth is vitally important as a public representative. Do you know how you can tell if someone's telling the truth? Their story remains the same every time they tell it. So I would urge all councillors, if you believe that our constituents deserve the truth, to back this motion, and I'll read the motion out. Council notes that the highest level of integrity and trust is required of those who hold elected office to serve our communities. Council notes significant concerns in the local community at the issues surrounding Michael Matheson's use of his parliamentary issued iPad, and that those concerns have been heightened by the changing account of what happened during the course of his explanations to the media and Parliament. Council agrees that a loss of confidence in Michael Matheson as a representative of the communities of Falkirk West as a result in the handling of this issue is so significant that the Council calls on him to resign as Cabinet Secretary for NHS Recovery, Health and Social Care, and as a member of the Scottish Parliament for Falkirk West. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Redmond. Do you have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Hannah.
I am happy to second this motion. Thank you, Provost. Happy to second this motion, although Councillor Steenbank was going to do this, but although he's with us today online, he is not feeling well enough to do this. So I will do my best to give as passionate a speech, as eloquent a speech as he would. This, to me, is Councillor Redmond has put forward the issues quite well, and members of the public are quite well aware of what has been happening. So I don't intend to go through that. I think members of the public have already read enough, heard enough, and formed opinions. An Ipsos Mori poll has shown that 2 out of 3 people think that Michael Matheson should go. And this is not a party political matter. That was a poll which covered people of all political persuasions. The issue is one of trust, and it's one of trust in people in public office. And it is with a great deal of sadness that I put forward this motion, and I support this motion. It's about honesty and integrity in public office.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hannah. I'll now go to Councillor Meikle-John.
Provost, I'm aware that we have an amendment and there's another amendment, and I would appreciate, because of the timing of the meeting and that it had a previous meeting, we weren't able to meet as a group beforehand, if we could have 10-minute recess.
Right, no problem. 10-minute recess. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll now go to Councillor Meikle-John for our amendment.
Thank you, Provost. And I'll move the amendment, then speak to it. Falkirk Council acknowledges that since his election 24 years ago, Mr Matheson has been an exemplary MSP and has held a number of roles in government at senior level and has done so with honesty and integrity throughout. Council recognises that there's been heightened level of public interest following a recent statement in the Scottish Parliament by Michael Matheson MSP in relation to the use of data from his iPad. He has also provided a clear explanation of the events and ensured that the Parliament was reimbursed for the full costs. It's disappointing, but not unexpected, considering the proximity of a general election, that the Labour group have brought forward this motion. It's political posturing at its worst, particularly as Falkirk Council has no role to serve and it's designed to continue to feed a media frenzy. To be honest, it's quite abhorrent to continue to berate Mr Matheson and his family, including the impact on his office staff as a result of the ongoing media interest. We must not forget the wider impact on others by continuing this approach. Mr Matheson has been an MSP since 1999 and has served his constituents well over the years, from being in opposition and backbenches to numerous ministerial and senior positions he's held over the last 24 years. He's been a diligent constituency member as well as a valued, effective member of government. He's never been involved in any political or personal controversy. Michael has accepted a mistake was made. It was not updating the SIM card. My personal view is that the Scottish Parliament IT department has a share in that mistake, as there was more that they could have done. And if that was Falkirk Council, I would be suggesting that internal audit should be looking at their practices and processes to ensure that no one else is caught out inadvertently in this way. He has also made it clear in his statement that he did not knowingly run up roaming charges and did check with the Parliament IT team before using the iPad abroad. He has also clearly explained the timeline and any perceived delay that is being highlighted, and I emphasise perceived, was having established what had happened, was preparing to protect his family, and as soon as it was apparent how the roaming charges were accrued, he reimbursed the Parliament. No one else used the iPad. The data costs were run up by hotspotting. And again, he clearly explained in his statement how that happened, and anyone that has young people in their family would fully appreciate they would not need to access the iPad to do that. I would defy anyone who has children to not identify with the desire to protect your family. That may well be something that the mover of this motion may not fully appreciate, but hope he will look back on this someday and reflect. God forbid that any politician makes an honest mistake. There's a few in this room that might just want to reflect on that, and I've been around long enough to remember quite a few misdemeanours over the years. The Labour Party in Falkirk's track record of MPs and candidates is not best. Such as Eric Joyce, who's in the media regularly for all the wrong reasons. And then there was the candidate who was just withdrawn from the Banknock and Denny by-election 2015, just days before the poll, and suspended for sectarian comments. And more recently in 2019, another candidate had to be withdrawn and suspended for anti-Semitic comments. Again, another comparison. There are a number of list MSPs who couldn't get elected first past the post, like Monica Lennon and Stephen Kerr, whose office costs are between 25 and 35% higher than Michael Matheson, who was elected first past the post and a cabinet secretary. Once you start, there's an awful lot of examples. We need to be careful about glass houses here. And I'll not take any lectures from the Tories on honesty and integrity and trust, when we've seen some of the billions owed to the Treasury and fraudulent loans written off, more money wasted on track and trace system that never worked. Then, of course, as the ex-Prime Minister Liz Truss, who crashed the economy, and that was before even touching Boris Johnson and his own party lockdowns, which people broke rules and the rest of us were following, going about our absolute best to protect our communities. And of course, there's Douglas Ross, who just forgot to declare his earnings from other jobs. The fact is, this issue of the internet charges has nothing to do with Michael Matheson's ability to carry out his job as a member of the Scottish Parliament and Scottish Government, and calls on his honesty and integrity as a political witch hunt to slight and slander and deflect from the lack of positive message that the Labour's election campaign has for the people of Scotland. The Labour group in Falkirk Council would rather spend time debating the issue that has no direct impact on Falkirk Council, while their own party leader talks of continuing to do the Tories' job for them, should they become elected in the next government, including no additional spending on public services at a time when councils across the country are crying out for more money to continue to fund public services. They then try to defend the position by blaming the Scottish Government rather than seek to address the real issues created by the UK Government's financial mismanagement, and that's put thousands of people into poverty, which is having to be mitigated by the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government. It's time the Labour Party stopped being led by the nose of their London-based masters and recognise that Scotland's people will only be better off in an independent country. Instead of focusing on things that really matter to the people of Falkirk, we're spending time here today debating a member of another elected body over which we have no responsibility to enable prospective election candidates to get a headline and a soundbite to fin their social media, while attempting to bring down a good, hard-working MSP with a proven track record and one that they can never aspire to. Thank you, Provost. I move the amendment.
Yeah, thanks very much. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Garner.
Thanks, Provost. And just to pick up my couple of points on Councillor Redmond's open speech, I'll only pick up a couple because I'm sure people will be looking at that externally and scrutinising that. His son actually never used the iPad, as Councillor Miko John referred to there. It was he accessed data, which is a totally different thing. And he has in fact attended one Celtic Rangers game, and that was as a Scottish Government minister. That is actual fact. So, Provost, Council notes that the highest level of integrity and trust is required for those who hold elected office to serve our communities. Provost Bissett, I'll be really interested to see which way you vote in the Labour motion. On a day that seemingly means so much to you, remembering Sunday at the War Memorial in Falkirk, you stated to Michael Matheson in front of others, and I quote, "What a load of nonsense given all that's going on in this world." So, Provost, in your own words, this is a load of nonsense. While will hypocrisy win the day, will you show real honesty and integrity and vote against this motion? I'd like to ask whether any other fathers and mothers in the chamber know what their kids are watching on their iPhones or their iPads all the time. My 10-year-old son can hotspot from his mum's iPad and his granddad's phone, has been able to do this for a couple of years. Yes, I have parental control over his devices, but I do not know if he's watching Sky Sports or playing Fortnite. Can any parent honestly say they know what their son or daughter is watching all the time? I certainly can't. Michael Marston stated in his statement to Parliament the reason he did not mention his kids was to protect them from the very significant media and political interest in the story and the press intrusion they've already experienced as a family. Michael, like others here, is a father first and foremost, and I believe he acted in a way that any father would to try and protect their children from becoming part of a media story. I definitely say I would. There was in fact no claim for £11,000. The media have given the impression he claimed for the bill. This is completely untrue. The cost is incurred by the central IT unit, just like our council phones, and I bet the itemised bills of some councillors here would make very interesting reading. In fact, Provost, directly after this meeting, I will be making an FY request into every single elected member's usage and help anyone that has used their council phones or laptops inappropriately. Michael Matheson has admitted he made a mistake, an honest mistake. He's paid the money back in full after realising what had actually happened, and as stated in our amendment, it is noted that the Scottish Parliament corporate body has indicated that it will undertake an investigation into line with its duties under an MSP Code of Conduct. The SPCB should be allowed to carry out this investigation as it is their role to do so, not Falkirk Council's. Council therefore agrees that it is inappropriate to comment on the matter. Provost, as a parliamentary iPad does not allow access to parliamentary computer system, so no personal data can be accessed. So any claims that constituents' data could have been accessed is false, as the iPad doesn't allow access to the main system. It can only be accessed from the constituency office or in the Parliament. Any suggestion of this shows a real lack of knowledge. Michael Matheson is one of the most hard-working elected members I have the privilege of meeting. He and his office work tirelessly for Falkirk and every community in this constituency. I can also add, unlike some others, Michael Matheson has not taken any ministerial pay increase since becoming a minister in 2011 that he's entitled to, along with many of his ministerial colleagues, and any annual increase is then put back into the Scottish Government budget for public spending. As I said, pathetic party politics trying to raise the profile of councillors who have very little profile within the I and the SNP group 100% support our amendment and Michael Matheson. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor Garner. Now go to Bailey Kerr. Do you have an amendment?
19-1, Provost, if you don't mind.
Councillor Bundy.
Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Provost. I think we're getting
Can't really-
distracted.
You're very quiet, Councillor Bundy.
Sorry, let's see. I'll turn the mic off. Yeah. Is that any better?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I feel like we're getting distracted from the motion, and I want to raise some concerns about some of the language that was used by Councillor Meikle-John. The suggestion that because Councillor Richmond doesn't have children, that differs his opinion on this matter. I think that is very concerning because I think Councillor Richmond has experience of young children and people running about and using technology. I have experience of that as well, and I don't have children personally, so I think that comment is out of step. And also language such as London-based masters, I think that is totally inappropriate, and I think it's right to put that on record. Our amendment thinks, well, we say that Michael Matheson should consider his position as an MSP rather than resign. We put that forward because there is a parliamentary investigation currently ongoing, and it would be wrong to jump the conclusion of that investigation. So we think Michael Matheson considering his position is far more appropriate than calling for him to resign. But we also state that we do agree with the calls for resignation. It's now about 5 weeks since this story broke. It's still dominating the newspapers, and it's distracting from the issues that the NHS and social care faces in Scotland. And when the minister becomes the story and not the issues that we're facing, that is damaging to the reputation of the Scottish Government.
Thanks, Councillor Bundy. Do you have a seconder for your amendment?
Yes, Provost. I'm more than happy to second Councillor Bundy's amendment. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I've obviously thought long and hard on this, and I'll certainly make a statement. I'll say it's on my own behalf. Michael Matheson admits a mistake. He has made an apology, he's paid the bill, and he's explained. But I ask you all in this room to stand aside as human and recognise the many years, 24 years since 1999, of service carried out by the MSP, and that we all accept his apology and move on. I would ask you all to look at this with an independent mind rather than a party political mind and stand aside as human.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Spears. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Again, first of all, I'm going to invoke a 19.1.
What's a 19.1?
I just found the SNP comments there absolutely scandalous.
What's a 19.1?
I consider myself both abused and being unfairly accused of a misdemeanour. Councillor Garner has threatened every member of council that he is going to seek a freedom of information request and seek all of our telephone records. That's absolutely scandalous. I'll leave it there with that, Provost.
19.1.
I'll now comment on the
well, Councillor McCabe, I'll just go to Councillor Garner for his 19.1.
Thanks, Provost. I think the 19.1 comes in at the back of it, Provost. If you seek clarification from Mr. Moody, okay. Councillor Garner can comment after.
Okay, carry on, you're correct.
Thank you, Provost. It's regrettable that this motion has had to come in front of full council today. This is not to criticise Councillor Redmond and the Labour group in any way, nor the amendment tabled by Councillor Bundy and the Conservative group, but rather to express my disappointment that this whole sorry matter has not been handled in a better and more professional way. Instead, the issue has been allowed to fester and gather in a manner which I feel has permanently damaged the Health Minister and our local MSP. Personally, I like Michael Matheson and have great respect for him as an individual. I recently met up with him at our Remembrance Day service in Denny, where I spoke to him on a personal level. I'm hearing it's very much like yourself, Provost. I said that I felt he'd had better weeks than the one just currently passed and encouraged him to stick in there. I wished him well. That was my view at the time. As things progressed and the matters took increasingly damaging turns regarding the £11,000 Wi-Fi charges and the settlement of this expense, it became clear that Michael had been a victim of carelessness rather than malfeasance, incompetence rather than dishonesty. Instead, there was a doubling down of his story, which led to the apparent cause of the excessive roaming charge on the iPad inevitably being revealed. That, to me, was when Mr. Matheson's position became unsustainable, and I had to review my position regarding Michael and his status as a health minister. I am still of the opinion that Michael is an honest and fair individual who's been seriously badly advised by his SNP colleagues. With clear and considered advice, the expenses debacle should have been paid and the matter put to bed timeously. Instead, we find ourselves discussing this matter here, and regrettably, I can see no alternative other than to support the Conservative amendment. It's not about my personal affection or opinion of Michael, but rather the public's perception of honesty and trust. Once that has gone, there's no real possibility of return. Mr. Matheson is our MSP. He was voted in by the electorate. It's up to that electorate to either re-elect him or vote him out. I'll leave it up to the electorate. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. We've got Councillor Gallagher with 19-1.
Thanks, Provost. And just to clarify, I haven't threatened to put the FOI in. I've actually contacted Mr. Moody already, so I've actually put the FOI in.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Moody.
I think Councillor Martin was voting.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Provost. I haven't got anything prepared to say on this matter, and I do regret that it is here. I don't think that this is the place to be debating this. And I think that whatever our personal opinion of Michael Matheson is irrelevant, although my own personal opinion of Michael Matheson is he's a really good guy, and I've had occasion to disagree with him on many, small matters. I'm not a member of the party anymore of which he represents, but that doesn't change my position of his personal integrity. But I suppose more than that, and I think it's relevant from the point of view of we know the circumstances around the situation with his children. I've often looked to Michael Matheson as an example of hope, in that the attitude he's taken to his ministerial duty, to his parliamentary duties, and always performing his functions diligently. He's always clearly been a family person, a father, and someone who could show that it was important to balance and put his family first. And that gave me hope as a politician that if somebody as senior as Mr. Matheson could say no to some of the demands that were being put on him politically, that was a good example to be setting, and I think he has set a good example to many. That does not mean that I don't think there are questions to answer about his conduct and about what happened, and I do. And I think that the proper place for that to be considered is within the Parliament's procedures. And I do think that Mr. Matheson should have to reflect on whatever the outcome of that is, and if there are lessons to be learned, and I think there are questions to answer. I'm not in a position to know what the facts of that are, and with respect, I don't think those on the administration or in the opposition, none of us are completely, and that's even with understanding perhaps some of us about the procedures within Parliament. I'm not completely clear either, and it's inappropriate. What I would say is that where I agree with much of what the administration colleagues have said, I'm really disappointed that the way that, Merry Christmas and peace and goodwill to all humankind here, the response is to fling mud from one side to the other. We've all got to work with each other in this chamber and get on. And I'm not sure that what's just happened is really a good illustration of how we're going to go on with that. Because I think, as I say, people in glass houses, we can all start pointing the finger at one another. I'm pretty sure that there's things which all of us, even with the high standards that we all hold ourselves to, the response to sort of the attack on one person is not to start attacking all and sundry. And I'm really disappointed that that's happened. As I say, I think that this is not the place to be debating this issue, and it's for Parliament to decide, and then for Michael Matheson to reflect following that, and whatever the outcome is. But it'd be nice if we could perhaps have a better tone all round than just saying you're as bad as others are, or people in glass houses in that way. So perhaps we could be more constructive going forward in this debate.
Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. Mr. Moody.
Councillor Redmond has a
Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. suppose it was always going to be a bit controversial, this one, that it has been. What is it? Am I to sum up here, or what are you going to say?
This is your time to sum up.
All right. Well, we've heard a lot. I would just come back, obviously, on the football matches thing. He's seen Celtic play Motherwell. He's seen Celtic play Kilmarnock, and it was another game as well. So he has been to quite a few football games. It's not just the one. As I say, we knew it was going to be controversial. I think we're kind of missing the point. It's not about the data that he used. It's that he claimed it through his expenses when he probably shouldn't have claimed it through his expenses. That's the issue. The issue is not you let your children use your data. The issue is you've made an expenses claim for your children using data. But yeah, I'll leave it there, and I think that's me summed up. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Councillor Redmond. Councillor Nimmo, the debate's finished and Councillor Redmond summed up, I'm afraid.
Sorry, Provost, I was a bit surprised about that because I did intend to come in and speak.
Well, I didn't see your...
Never mind.
Okay, thank you.
Hand was up.
I never saw it. My apologies.
Thank you, Provost. We'll now move to the vote, and we have two amendments, so there will be two votes because we'll need to take each amendment in turn. I know that we did agree a different way of doing this yesterday, but that won't be in force until the new standing orders are in place. So the motion is on the agenda of the meeting. It's moved by Councillor Redmond and it's seconded by Councillor Hannah, against which there is an amendment moved by Councillor Meiklejohn and seconded by Councillor Garner. Provost Bissett.
Motion.
Deputy Provost Balfour.
Amendment.
Councillor Aitchison.
Motion.
I believe that Councillor Anslow has had to leave the meeting. Councillor Binney.
Amendment.
Councillor Bowes.
Amendment.
Councillor Brown.
Motion.
Councillor Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Bundy.
Motion.
Councillor Colley.
Amendment.
Councillor Deacon.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine.
Amendment.
Councillor Flynn.
Motion.
Councillor Forrest.
Amendment.
Councillor Garner.
The amendment.
Councillor Hannah.
Motion.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor McCabe.
Motion.
Councillor Meiklejohn.
Amendment.
Councillor Murtagh.
Amendment.
Councillor Nimmo.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Patrick.
Motion.
Councillor Redmond.
Motion.
Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Sinclair.
Amendment.
Councillor Spears.
Amendment.
And Councillor Steinbank.
The motion.
Provost, there are 15 votes for the motion. There are 12 votes for the amendment. There is one abstention. The motion is carried. And we now proceed to the second amendment, which is the amendment moved by Councillor Bundy and seconded by Councillor Flynn. Provost Bissett.
Motion.
Deputy Provost Balfour.
Abstain.
Councillor Aitchison.
Motion.
Councillor, beg your pardon, Councillor Anslow had left. Councillor Binney.
Abstain.
Councillor Bowes.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
Amendment.
Bailey Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Bundy.
Amendment.
Councillor Colley.
Abstain.
Councillor Deacon.
Abstain.
Councillor Devine.
Abstain.
Councillor Flynn.
Amendment.
Councillor Forrest.
Abstain.
Councillor Garner.
Abstain.
Councillor Hannah,
Motion.
Councillor Kelly,
Motion.
Bailey Kerr,
Amendment.
Councillor McCabe,
Amendment.
Councillor Meiklejohn,
Abstain.
Councillor Murtagh,
Abstain.
Councillor Nimmo,
Motion.
Councillor Patterson,
The motion.
Councillor Patrick,
The amendment.
Councillor Redmond,
Motion.
Councillor Ritchie,
Abstain.
Councillor Sinclair,
Abstain.
Councillor Spears,
Abstain.
and Councillor Steinbank.
Motion.
Provost, there are 9 votes for the motion. There are 6 votes for the amendment. There were 13 abstentions. The motion carries.
Point of clarification, Provost.
Carry on.
There was no facility for me to vote against either of those motions or amendments that have just been carried. How can I record my dissent against them, please?
Mr. Moody?
Sorry, I can't hear the room.
If you give me just a moment to consult the standing orders, I'll check the issue on dissent. My recollection is that it's only available in cases where an amendment is put forward and not seconded. But if you give me just a moment. My apologies for the delay, Provost. It was worth, I think, just checking, but my recollection is correct. It isn't available in these circumstances.
Okay, could I further clarify then on my own behalf? I don't speak at the moment on behalf of my party. My abstention in the last round of votes was an abstention, but it doesn't mean to say that I don't agree nor disagree with it. I am fully against both of the amendment and the motion. And if that can be in any way recorded, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. That's the last motion, so it only leaves me to wish you all a Merry Christmas and you and your families a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Provost. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.